So I lost the original footage that was supposed to be the unboxing. So here's the box. Sorry about that. But I'll just give you a brief review since I was in the middle of mounting the scope when my previous footage got lost. So I could just give you a review now that I got all that out the way. So first thing first. So this was the box inside the box. We call it that. So this is what it came with here, or this is how it came. So you can take a quick look there as to what you should expect if you're looking to pick one of these up. Now, this one I did get from Optics Planet because it was on a open box clearance sale, I want to say. Um, Basically, they just wanted to get it out. Now, usually I'm avoiding SIG stuff, but for the features that this thing has, I wanted it. Flat as that. I'll try to limit my SIG purchases moving forward. But that being said, you probably read somewhere in the description or in the title. I haven't made it up yet, but let me go ahead and get the features out the way here. So we're talking first focal plane, 1 to 10x, and 26 millimeter. And I believe the rings are 34, if I'm correct. I'm going to have to double check on that. I did like the coyote color. And I think the overall price I paid was a little north of 400, maybe 406 to be exact, and rupees or whatever currency is involved. But that being said, let me go ahead and just unbox it here. Like I said, I already have everything mounted, and I'll go over that in a brief review. But this is my upgrade. I know it might be considered cheap for an upgrade, but coming from the Omnia 1 to 8 from True Glow. So I had this original piece in here for the mount. So that was the first thing that came out. Here is a cleaning cloth. More on that soon. There's a couple of hex wrench tools. I only used the larger one. And here's your instruction manual. Was really no help at all, to be completely honest. I did watch another review that said the exact same thing, and he was right. Here's the battery warning, and they want you to take that warning seriously because even the 2032 came in a very child-proof type of way. It was like fully sealed by plastic all around. And here's another instruction on the battery. So they want you to take this battery very, very seriously. But just in case if you're wondering on why I'm comparing it to the True Glow, was that the True Glow was my previous LPVO that I had on my CMMG Resolute. But that being said, this is going to go to a friend of mine. This was a 1 to 8 by 24 millimeter on a 30 millimeter tube. Nothing wrong with it. There's actually certain advantages to this one that once I compare it to the SIG, that will become apparent. But for the overall sense, the SIG is the better optic in many ways. So, like I said, this is going to go to a friend of mine that he can mount on his 22 rifle. And that gave me an excuse just to pick this one up. So let me go ahead and show you what I have mounted here. So here it is on the Resolute. Hopefully it looks decent. I know the color pattern is a little different, but hopefully aesthetically it's not too bad. So that being said, let's go over some of the installation ideas or installation quirks, I should say, I found. So they do include here like a center line here that's meant to be balanced between the scope and the ring, which is a very good idea in practice. But in my case, when I initially centered it and looked down the tube immediately, what's supposed to be flat was tilted or off tilted, however the expression goes for something that is off its horizontal axis. So I get the idea. I mean, this was a great idea, but if you look to pick this up, it may not work in practice as it does. Well, let's say if everything that you have is perfectly centered, so to speak, this in theory should work, and it's not too far off. But initially, when I did have it there, it was not accurate toward, at least toward my eye, and also toward the passive devices up front. That again, it was tilted. So went ahead and loosened up the screws. Screws feel fine. Nothing to write home about there. Like neither super impressive nor bad, just fine. The turrets are very much an improvement compared to the True Glow ones, which aren't bad, but these have a more refined aspect, especially when closing. They're very quiet, not as loud as what I have with the True Glow, and they don't require what it feels like any effort at all to open and close, especially on the closing side. So that feels like a step up in the quality versus, let's say, the True Glow. I believe retails at around close to 500 in the 400 range, but you can find them for under 300. And in my case, I think I paid somewhere around the 240 to 250 area. And this again was the one on clearance for 400. Forgive me for not knowing the MSRP off the top of my head, especially for this color, but it's still a step up, is the main point. So that being said, one nice touch of a feature, even though they both have the turrets here for moving through the range of the magnification, they both feel as good. Neither of them are super fast or super slow. They feel fine. They require some effort, so bumping them won't be an issue. But I do like the fact that they added a little bit of a strip of what should we call it? A fiber optic, just to keep track of it at night. So good feature, good touch. Adds a little dose of refinement. Like I said, there's some things about this that aren't completely crazy, but are overall nicer, even when it comes to how the turrets come off. Just has a lot more, no, excuse me, a little more refinement than usual compared to what I had experimented with the True Glow. Um, Now, the one thing that will be different is your perception of the reticle, because of the True Glow being a second power, or excuse me, second focal plane. That's what I meant to say. Compared to the first focal plane here, this behaves like you should believe a true scope should, as far as the magnification going along with the reticle. Might be harder for me to actually show you, but I'll show you on this one. But where the reticle on the True Glow stayed stationary, of which I showed in its review video over here. Let me see if I can position this in such a way that what you're looking at may not align for you, unfortunately. And both the turrets are up. Oh, there we go. Had it for a sec. There we go. So what you're looking at here is that whenever you're going to go through the act of the magnification, as far as, come on, just trying to see. here. When I get it, and then I lose it. So sorry for the less than professional aspect of it, but I'm moving through the magnification. But as you see that the closing in is magnifying there, right? So how you, excuse me with the camera, how you're going to interact with it um, on viewing it yourself will be more along the lines of, especially with the illumination, that your illumination is going to be really tiny, and that benefits it because you can make it super bright without it being overwhelming to the eyes, because again, it will be super small that it's focused on, and that will act as your donut of, you know, or the reticle that will be best used for close encounters. Now, that is something that is more pronounced on the second focal plane on the True Glow, especially when you leave it at 1x, because it has a wider rainbow to work with, but also larger margin of error. Especially if you're not used to the zero or shooting at closer distances, that may happen even with a rifle under those parameters. So you got to test these things, even with the leveling, even with what you could see and what the other person thought in their review, that even though the line was centered, that this doesn't mean that you're truly centered for precision shooting or even for defensive shooting. This is all something that has to be tested just off rip. So don't get me wrong. Even though I have it mounted, it's not mounted and done. I have to verify it, but along with my verification of the passive items, this should work the same way that it worked in the Omnia, but of course it will be tested. That being said, I'll probably leave a follow-up comment if something was off about my process for verification on what I expect from the 0 to B, or for defensive shooting, how much variation I should have between the scope and the barrel. So that kind of compensation is something that should be talked about more, but sometimes you just take people's word for it and they don't test it themselves, and that's where you kind of lose on a little bit of nuance there. So other things that I could say for it, I do like that it does specify on the mount itself how much pound feet that you should expect, between the rings being 25 and the bottom mount being at 65. So good news there for the torque wrench people. You don't have to second guess it. And quick to say, doesn't really matter much to me, but having to tie it down on the left side feels kind of funny compared to where I had it before on the Omni on the right side for the nuts. But if this is correctly called a nut, forgive my terminology, but you also might like it too that it's on the left side, because it doesn't get in the way of the ejector port. So one less thing to get in the way, right? I did have to be mindful of the turret bumping into my my side mounted red dot. That worked out just fine. I will say the eye relief was something that was immediately no issue at all. Pretty much I mounted it, or even before I mounted it, I actually got the parallel. Okay, let me remove this so I can show you. But the adjustment over here, parallax, excuse me. I got that right for myself. And once I set that and put it on, the eye relief was, even though it was a 1 to 10, on the base 1X was much better, much easier to deal with and dial in than the Omnia. The Omnia, I had to wait till I got everything lined up and then started playing around with the parallax. And this one, I set the parallax from the jump, put it on, and it stayed consistent. So a lot more forgiveness in this product. So again, refinement went a long way here. Same thing goes with the glass quality. Was that there was a notable improvement, let's call it that, compared to the Omnia before. What I will say is that, as someone else reported on, especially the 10X, the 1X is great, even up to 5X is also great, and that's where its limitation is. And that's kind of a spoken rule for LPVOs, is that whatever your highest magnification is, you cut that in half, and that's probably going to be your sweet spot. Exactly the same with this, except I will say that it was even um, usable. It's usable up to 8. 10 was where it got really foggy, really cloudy. 8 even was on that level, but a little bit better in detail. 8 is about the max I will push it, but 5 is the sweet spot. So that being said, with the Omnia, because of how the reticle was set up on its magnification, it was more tricky at distance. So I actually avoided using the magnification in favor of how well the reticle was set up for its base 1X, and I would perform not necessarily a 0 from there, but know where I should place my holds in a defensive situation based on the silhouette from how high and where the point of impact is. I suspect this to be a lot easier, even on its base 1X magnification, just because it's so centered around the first focal point. But that being said, the sight acquisition will probably be faster based on that, just because of how large, again, that reticle is for the rainbow or donut, whichever one you want to call it. But with this being as it is set up, I actually feel more comfortable actually passively aiming it with my front sight already up, because it kind of gives like a second reference. And that's the way that I actually like a scope to be set up, is that it has a little bit of redundancy with the passive items, just so that this is lined up, this is lined up, this is lined up, excluding the side dot. So a little bit of uniformity goes a long way when you have multiple devices. So that's something that I'll say I appreciate immediately from this scope. And I'm trying to think what else I could say about it. There is one thing I will say about the Illumination, if I haven't mentioned it before. Actually, two things, to be honest. So the first thing, even though it mentions the 10 pound-feet over here, it's easily marred even with a flathead screwdriver that I used with their included cloth. So putting the cloth and twisting it still ended up in abrasions, little abrasions on the metal there. So I'm not sure you're going to be able to see it from here. Probably not, but at least it's visible to my eyes. So don't expect some kind of Leopold Night Force quality to hold up with, at least with the paint, so to speak. There's certain things that you pay for, and this is one of the things that they save on. So that is what it is. The second thing is that even compared to the Omnia, which pretty much was exceptional in use compared to this now, when I'm going through, flipping through the Illumination settings, this tends to have a flicker, depending on how much you might have to play around with the pound feet on it, at least in my case, that I guess depending on the pressure and the connection, it will act differently. So when I first put it on and just hand twisted it, it was flickering on the 11 and 10 settings. And then when I tightened it, then it went smooth until I got to about 7. And 7, it really flickered, and then it settled. And then so I dialed it back a bit, and now let's test it live, because the last time I did, everything worked out okay. But let's go ahead and just go through it. I'm at 5 now, where it starts to get visible. I did get a small flicker at 7, but it flicked and stayed on. So let's go to 6. Flicking on, flicking on. it's fine. All the way to 10, 11 holding, and now it's off. So you may have to play around with the turret, at least for the battery cap. I said turret. I meant to say battery cap. Just on the pressure, may be sensitive to that. But again, that was something that was not an issue on the Omnia, but I will watch out and monitor for this and leave any updates in case I need to use the warranty, which it does come with a lifetime warranty that is transferable, which is not the case on the True Glow. The True Glow has a lifetime warranty just for the original owner, so that is also a step up here. And I will say, at least for me, that pretty much covers it. If you have any questions or concerns, comments, leave it down below. Sorry for the extended talking. I just felt like these were some few points that people who were LPVO people like to go through. So again, thank you for your time. Take care. See ya.